So I am Allison Del Medico. I am just short of 40 years old and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Have two children. My daughter is 10 and my son is 8. Um, I work full time and have my whole life for as long as I have been able and eligible. So in 2011, after a series of examinations, trying from one doctor to another, one specialty to another, essentially, I had been feeling sort of some pain on my face, particularly when I was sleeping, when my head hit the pillow. It didn't feel right. So we saw a series of doctors, and I finally was diagnosed with adenoid cystic carcinoma in my parotid gland. So this, for everyone, obviously was a huge shock. I was also pregnant at the time with my daughter. So a lot of complications, or a lot of considerations we had to make. We knew it was a slow growing tumor. And we wanted to wait until after I had my daughter. So I did have her. And shortly after that, we followed up with surgery. I actually had my surgery done at the Cleveland Clinic, primarily because we were new to living in Atlanta and I did not have any doctors here. I had no family here and I had a newborn with my husband. So we chose to fly back home to Ohio where we could be with our family and they could kind of help out. I had my surgery done in September of 2011. My margins were somewhat clear, but they felt that it was necessary to do radiation. So since that was going to be a time-consuming effort, I healed from my surgery, came back to Atlanta, and I followed up with 33 treatments of radiation in finishing up in December of 2011. So again, I was, dealing with a newborn baby at the time. So a lot of factors. I didn't quit my job either. So it was a challenging time, I would say. I think having that being so young, I feel like I have been able to kind of turn that experience into the positive and have started volunteering in a number of different forums through Emory Winship Cancer Institute and a couple of others. I'm happy to go into detail, but so I feel like I'm trying to give back because everything happened so quickly and I didn't really have a chance to process anything. I just had to sort of react and keep feeding my baby. You know what I mean? Like I just had to keep moving and I didn't have a whole lot of time to think. And now is, my time to sort of process everything and make sure that I'm doing the right things going forward so that I can do whatever I can to not, fall into there's so many triggers out there, I feel like, or biometrics, and I'm just trying to make good, healthy choices in life now and do what I can to avoid any sort of metastasis or whatever, and help others that are in similar scenarios because it was a unique situation, I guess. And coincidentally, I just went to my survivorship clinic yesterday, which is my favorite appointment or favorite, doctor group of all of them. And as you're probably aware, we see a lot of different doctors, but this is my favorite one because it's all about long-term care. And I think that's the hardest part of this whole experience is now that I'm kind of nearing remission, they tell me 10 years from when I finished radiation. So that will be December for me. To answer your question, I have not had any metastasis, which I feel extremely lucky. And I think that's also rare, but we are very active in my long-term care plan to make sure that we're aware of the areas that are at risk. And I feel like the biggest part of my story that I want people to know is pay attention to your body and trust your instincts, because that's how I found this all in the first place. I just knew something didn't feel right here. It didn't feel the same as this. And I just knew it was wrong. And, one doctor would say, oh, I think it's nothing. And I didn't believe it. You know your body better than anyone, and you go with it. So you have to find the answer that feels right to you. So again, to your answer, I do not have any, but I'm very active in my long-term care plan and staying up on all the things that they say that I should or should not be doing, to do the best that I can in hopes that it doesn't happen again. I would say the most helpful, Emory University Hospital has a lot of different resources, as I'm sure so many different of the treatment centers across the globe do. But I guess to that point, being a comprehensive care center, I have really utilized almost every available sort of channel that they have to offer, from a social worker to a dietitian to, gosh, I'm trying to think who else the support groups. I've seen, but besides my care group, I saw a therapist. It was kind of different than a social worker. So I guess really taking advantage of the available resources that such a big center has, even if I didn't think I needed them. Half the time I got into the room and thought, okay, yeah, I probably didn't need this, but I'm glad that I'm here to at least cross that off, to make sure that I'm paying attention to or listening to myself to say, are you being truthful? Are you eating the way you're supposed to be eating, even though I think I'm making good choices? And, having that sort of reality check of someone that's their job, and they're looking out for you in a different perspective, right? These are all sort of specialists in the oncology world. So even though I think I know what I'm doing, just getting myself in that room to really own up to something that I was potentially experiencing, or it was a risk for me, having the awareness of what that risk was. Even I saw an audiology group because my ear didn't feel the same, and the results were great. He said, your ear is totally fine. Get out of here. He was basically saying, from a diagnosis perspective, there's nothing wrong with you. But I kept saying to him, there's some things I'm experiencing, and I know this is a side effect of, radiation. Let's talk through this. So just kind of forcing all the players to keep it real, for lack of better words, about, what was going on, and forcing myself to take ownership of what could happen and what exactly I was really going through. And is there something I'm missing? I guess I needed to kind of keep the big picture in perspective. So I would say that was the best part of my long-term care plan, and just staying up on, I'm sort of a list maker, list follower. And I like the fact that, they give us sort of in your treatment summary, they say you should see your, X doctor every year. You should have a chest scan every blah, blah, blah. When they say you need to see your PCP every year, you need to see your derm every year, your teeth are at risk because you had all kinds of radiation on your dental, on your teeth, essentially. You need to see them every quarter. Just like literally sticking to that, which is easy for me to do because I'm in accounting. That's my background. It's what I do for work. So I like having a list of like recommended things. And I don't think of them as a recommendation. I think of this is part of your day. This is part of your job. This is part of your life. Like cross all of these things off. This is what you can do, because there's so many factors I can't control in my life. That is something I can do to kind of be aware of the things going on. So far, I would say sticking to that has been really helpful. The hardest part of the long-term care plan is the further you get out, you have less interactions with those people. There's less of a need, and that can really take a toll on you emotionally. This was supposed to be, hopefully, knock on wood, my last MRI I just had last month. And that's really hard for me because unless I'm experiencing a symptom, I don't have any other reason for someone to say, yep, you're good. And that's a hard thing to swallow because it's just scary. So I would say that to me is the downfall, not the downfall, but the hardest part of the long-term care plan. It is also the goal, right? You're supposed to be needing the teams less and less and less. That puts more of an emotional burden on you, I think, to kind of own the fact that, okay, you're okay and you're doing the right things, but you don't need all these external channels anymore because you're doing well. And I think it's a difficult thing to get your head around, the fact that you are doing well, because if you're not getting those scans and you're not talking to those doctors as frequently as you were in the beginning, you have to just rely on your own self. What I learned from the second day after my diagnosis, the first day was tough. Second day, I learned very quickly from my husband that being positive can totally change the navigation of your experience. And I just think I would be in a totally different place if I didn't have his sort of ridiculous optimism. And I guess, to your point about, next year you're going to be going through something, feeling the same, or in the same boat as me. If you're staying positive, I think that's just half the battle. And I don't know. I just think that so many people can let this take over their soul. And it's so easy to do, honestly. I kind of take that moment when I am in my MRI, which is part of the reason I'm going to miss those scans so much too, because I lived my life the whole year. And then in that MRI room, underneath that little scanner thing, I literally cry almost the whole time, because it's the one time I let myself be vulnerable and say, why am I here? Why did this happen to me? But if you go through the other 364 and a half days thinking about that, it's going to make everything else so much harder. So I think it's good to give grace to yourself and take that moment and just be honest with how you feel. But then the rest of the time, you have to keep going. And it's good, I think, to have that sort of endpoint, your remission. Celebrate in your own way. I think I'm going to end up celebrating by myself because my husband is so superstitious and he's like, I don't want to ever talk about that experience again and whatnot. But everybody, needs to experience it in a different way. I need some closure on my part, and, there's so many elements of this experience that are, in my control, and exercise and diet are two of them. And I feel like even just thinking about the way you, when you go to the grocery store, processed foods and that sort of thing, it's so easy and it's right there in front of you. But if you really pay attention to what your caregivers, and use that term caregiver loosely, because usually that meant, your partner or some family member who is kind of taking care of you. But I consider a caregiver sort of a little bit further too, those dietitians and your maybe your nurse navigator or primary care that are looking out for you. They're telling you, keep a rainbow plate. And I didn't know what that meant. I took that and kind of processed that for a minute. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean when I go to a grocery store, for example? And I had a personal trainer tell me actually that you need to stay on the outside of a grocery store. You go in the insides, it's all the processed food. And I really took that to heart, because I thought, okay, that is one thing that I can definitely control. I can shop on the outside of the grocery store to make sure that I'm doing fresh fruits and vegetables and eggs and, whatever. But I would, in addition to that, in addition to my diet, I feel like the other big thing was exercise. Again, that something that fuels my mind. There's a lot of negative thoughts that can enter about this whole experience, and everybody knows exercise creates endorphins, and endorphins make people happy. I think it's a quote in some movie. But it's true. It absolutely, creates this channel for you to release some negative energy, and positive energy is contagious. And then you surround yourself with, I find myself getting partners for a lot of the exercise that I do, because socially you're generating this positive energy, and it just makes for a better outlook and a better life. So I'm a huge proponent of exercise. I do all of it. Because I think also as you get older, balance is important, and going through radiation and surgery too, I have to be, thoughtful of the fact that I might have some scar tissue and whatnot. So I do yoga and meditation and stretching to kind of relax some of the muscles that build up. And, I do a lot of running and pounding on pavement with tennis, and just kind of having that balance in life, which I think is another huge key, I guess, to this whole thing, is just having a balance in your diet, in your interactions with the people in your life, sort of keeping that in perspective. And then in the exercise, I just think it all, kind of fuels the circle of life, right? It helps you make you a better you.